Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay here. We're going to get going. It is 6:37, and I'm going to call the April 11th Urban Design Commission meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Monica Sullivan.
Here.
Ed Leonetti.
Here.
Nicole Ream. Here. Melissa Morse.
Here.
Barbara Cash.
Here.
Jerry Winchester will be late. Joe Miller and Steve Cohen have been excused. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then the next is Ms. Cash.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
motion to reorder the agenda.
Yep.
And I'd like to include a presentation from Mr. Davis on the long-range planning update. And
Okay, great.
I think that's after cases.
After C, special order of business before or after disclosures. Is that what you're referring to?
No, after the cases are discussed. As
Okay.
an appearance. Okay, under appearance request.
Okay,
All right?
great. Thank you. We get a second to that motion. Ms. Morse, thank you. Speak to your motion. Just to reorder, to add it to the agenda. Any opposition to that? None. Okay, that goes. So the agenda is reordered. Thank you. Now we will go to disclosures. We'll just go down the line. Ms. Cash, do you have any disclosures tonight?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, it's minor, but I should disclose.
Okay.
From case 2018-0030, I was the original architect, designer for Winterberry. Now they have another designer, so, I mean, they are our client too, but I don't think I have any financial.
Were you involved with this case
No.
coming before us? No. Okay. I don't think if there's no financial.
No.
Okay, and I mean, we can certainly put it to if somebody wants to make a motion that you participate or not, it's up to the commission here. I'll wait for somebody to hit the button. It doesn't sound like everybody's shaking their head no, so it doesn't sound like that's a big deal. Oh, and we only have, yeah. So we'll bring that. It appears that there's not a conflict.
No.
Thank you. Ms. Morse.
Nothing to disclose.
Thank you. Ms. Ream.
Yes, I do have one on the consent agenda for the resolution of case 2018. I am going to abstain from voting on that. I am managing that project.
Correct. Okay, and since that was already voted on before, we do not need to vote on it again tonight. You will just recuse yourself from the approval of the minutes. And sorry, not the minutes and the resolutions of approval. Mr. Winchester just arrived. Welcome, Mr. Winchester. Yep, you're good. So we're just going through the disclosures right now. And I will go that I do not have any disclosures to give you a couple more minutes here. If you have any disclosures, Mr. Winchester, go ahead and speak now.
I don't believe I do, no.
Okay, great, thank you. The next one is the favorite of tonight, which is the elections. So, the terms are up, and to go forward from right now, we need to have somebody come forward with a who would like to be chair. Do we have a nomination for chair? I cannot nominate chair, so if somebody could speak. Ms.
I would like to nominate
Sullivan.
Commissioner Nicole Ream for the chair.
Okay. We have a second? Waiting for a second. Cash, thank you. Any objections to that? Do you accept the nomination, Ms. Ream?
I accept.
Yes. All right. Good to hear. Thank you. So with no objections, then we do not need to vote. So that's good.
We need a vice chair.
And I'm being told this will be affected, we can make it effective next meeting if you were, she's shaking her head yes. So that will be effective, what is this, May meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. Chair, Commissioner.
No problem. So now we need a vice chair. Get a motion for a vice chair. Ms. Cash, turn your mic on.
I would like to nominate Mr. Winchester
Oh,
for vice
all right.
chair.
We got a second from Ms. Ream. Mr. Winchester, would you like to accept that nomination?
I would accept.
All right, it's good to hear. Any opposition? None. So that is good and effective next meeting. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. On to the consent agenda. Resolution for approval for case 2018-006 is the case, which is context-sensitive solutions transportation project site plan review. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Ms. Ream is abstaining. Ms. Cash, thank you. Ms. Sullivan, thank you. Do you guys have any questions or comments on that? Shaking your head, none. That consent agenda is approved. Thank you. The next is a regular agenda, which is case number 2018-0035, statewide door and glass review in the B4 Rural Business District in accordance with AMC Title 21, Old Code Sections 2145, 125, and 2145, 130 for proposed development project. Can we have staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As you've outlined, this is an approval for the screening provisions for major highways for statewide door and glass. This project is before the Urban Design Commission because the site is zoned B4, which is a rural business district. The Planning Department website reads as follows: under the new Title 21, applications for entitlements under Title 21 filed on or after January 1st, 2014 for properties within the following area zoning district shall continue to be reviewed under the old code. The B4 district is among those districts. The project site is located at the end of LaBar Street in South Anchorage. The eastern property boundary of this site is subject to the screening along major highways requirement. So the code requires either the maintenance of the existing vegetation or installation of landscaping if the existing vegetation is deficient or lacking in the setback area adjacent to the right-of-way. The setback area shall be an average of 30 feet wide. The landscape plan shows some infill landscaping consisting of 5 8-foot-tall Colorado green spruce trees. The plan also notes the existing evergreen trees in the highway screening area. Heights are shown for these trees. In this proposal, there is some parking located in the front of the building. However, the parking is screened from the highway by leaving the existing vegetation in place. As for the approval of site plan, likewise, the parking and loading areas will be approved by the traffic department, and when I reviewed it, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, anything to call out. But as I mentioned, the traffic department will be taking a look at it also. And the department recommends final approval for the case, and there are 3 conditions. And I'll answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Ferguson? Hearing none, thank you. So is the petitioner here? Hello. If you could state your name for the record and spell it, please.
Okay, Melissa Branch, B-R-A-N-C-H, with Big City Engineers and the petitioner's representative.
Yeah, we've been working with the planning department on this. It's kind of a funny one just because of the old code thing, but we don't have any objection to the conditions, so we're just here to answer any questions you may have too.
Great. Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 47 seconds left. That was awesome. Do you have any questions for the petitioner? Nope. Okay. So since there's no questions, it's not a public hearing. Next is rebuttal. There's nothing to... So what would the commission like to do? Ms. Morse.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move to approve case number 2018-0035 with the 3 department recommendations, as there is no concern from the owner's representative.
Great, thank you. And we have a second from Ms. Cash. Would you like to speak to your motion, please?
I intend to support this motion because I think it's been well-planned and well explained, and it's understandable, and it complies as much as it is required.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Morse. Would you like to speak to your motion as well?
I commend the applicant for working closely with the planning department and dealing with the loopholes of changing the old code to the new one. That's all.
Great. Okay, I think we need a few more findings. Does any other commissioners have any comments or can offer findings?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a button to push.
Oh, go ahead.
Request to speak.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. I found it. Per new Title 21, the existing landscaping screening from the Seward Highway meets the intent of Table 21.07-1 point, which is the 30 feet of landscape. These are established trees, and the owner's representative has agreed to the condition of replacing any that had to be removed for construction. So I think the screening, which is the largest part of this approval, is met by intent of the new code.
Great, thank you. Ms. Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. I just want to point out that I believe Ms. Morris referred to the new code, just if she could reiterate it and say the old code, and then we'll be all good. And you might refer to the, it's on the first page, under UDC Review and Approval Authority, under AMC 21.10.028C. And that's the portion of the old code that this pertains to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morse.
Looking for the reference.
It's right on the first page. You see UDC Review and Approval Authority, just under that, under AMC 21.
Okay, so
Yep.
code reference being the previous Title 21, the or old code, AMC 21.10-028C is the landscaping screening that this project is subject to. Correction.
Sorry, if I could add, under section 21.45-130.
This is the bottom of page 1.
Is that the latter part of that
It's the top.
sentence?
Yeah, it's the top of page 1.
Okay,
Do you want me to restate that, Lori?
that would be great.
You're still typing? Okay. So, findings for the approval. The project meets the intent of the old AMC 21.10.028C under section 21.45.130. The intent of the code is the 30-foot landscape screening, and the existing vegetation seems to meet that, as well as the owner rep agreeing to replace any trees removed during construction.
Great,
That was much cleaner the second time.
thank you. Not seeing anybody else. If we could all vote. That motion passes. Thank you. Now I'm going to read the appeals. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any actions that the Urban Design Commission takes, except commission recommendations of the Assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Urban Design Commission of the resolution, which is the commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. Thank you. And if we could go back one step, letter B, rather, is the approval of the minutes. I don't believe that we did that. So thank you, Ms. Morse. Ms. Cash for the second. Ms. Morse, you state your motion.
I move to approve the January 10th, 2018 minutes, I believe. Yes.
Great, thank you. Anybody have any changes to that? Seeing and hearing none, that is passed. Thank you. Okay, now, excuse me, we're on to public hearings. And I need to read this. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Urban Design Commission at its meetings is: 1, after the staff presentation is completed on the public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issues. 2, persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in Urban Design Commission rules of procedures. 2A, petitioners, including all his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Rebuttal by the petitioner may be allowed when the time has been reserved. 2B, representatives of groups, community council, PTAs, etc. have 5 minutes. 2C, individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the commission. You may only testify once on an issue unless questioned by the commission. And number 4, an individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes, except commission recommendations to the Assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Urban Design Commission of the resolution, which is the commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. Case number 2018-027, major site plan review for Winterberry Charter School Building Addition, which was postponed from the March meeting. Mr. McLaughlin, have your presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Winterberry School was constructed under the old code as a permitted by right use and structure in the R3 mixed residential district. Now that we're into the new code, the petitioner is requesting for approval of changes to the building, an increase in the bulk of the building. And under the new code, it requires a major site plan review approval by the Urban Design Commission. That's why we're here today. So it's considered to be a de facto approved major site plan, and the changes are what's being reviewed against the new code. The department has found that the building addition, 6,585 square foot building addition to the existing school is supported by the comprehensive plan and meets the approval criteria for site plan reviews, as well as the use-specific standards for elementary and middle schools. With the conditions of approval listed on page 5 and 6 of your packet. The department's recommending approval of amendments to the de facto major site plan review, subject to the conditions 1 through 4 on pages 5 and 6 of your packet. The first two conditions of approval are standard, approving this site plan and recording a notice of zoning action. The third condition of approval is to identify on-site snow storage areas, and then the fourth condition of approval is to provide a budget for bringing characteristics of use into conformance. That is all I have for comments. Be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Hearing and seeing nothing. We have the petitioner here tonight. If you could state your name for the record and spell it, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Laquita Chmielowski. It's Chmielowski, and I'm with Enterprise Engineering. I'm here tonight representing MH Properties, the owner of the Winterberry Charter School site. And so, as staff mentioned, this is a approximately 6,500 square foot building addition. The building addition is for additional classroom space for specialty classes that are already being offered at the school. Right now, those classes are held in administrative spaces or they have to move between classrooms. So as you can imagine, if you're the music teacher, having to move around is not the most efficient way to teach. So we are not adding any students to the capacity of the school. This is purely to accommodate the existing classes. So as staff also mentioned, this was originally done under old Title 21, and as we went through the site plan review, we found that the site, for the most part, meets most of the requirements of new Title 21 as well. The building addition will look very similar to the existing building as far as colors and materials, and the site will remain essentially the same other than a fire lane addition on the south side of the building. We have no objections to the conditions presented in the staff packet, and with that, I'd reserve the rest of my time for a rebuttal.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Chmielowski? Ms. Ream.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the conditions is to have 10% of the costs bring project closer to new code. You say it really doesn't, it's really kind of meeting those codes, so are you going to be able to make that happen?
Yes, yeah, I mean, there are some, of course, we don't have 6 shrubs per tree because of the landscaping. There isn't a pedestrian connection to Northern Lights. So there are some areas where we can look to bring it closer to conformance.
So you don't have a problem with that condition then?
No.
Okay. That's it for now.
Thank you. Anybody else?
There's no, sorry.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
There's no changes in the site, like major changes.
Nope,
The layout
the
is
fire lane is the only addition.
the fire lane.
Uh-huh.
Was that it, Ms. Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. McLaughlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was just a helpful piece of information for Ms. Ream and the rest of the commission for future cases and that if the applicant can bring the site fully into conformance with the new code for less than 10% of total project costs, then if they could do it for $1, then they would be done with that. They don't have to spend more than it would take to bring it into conformance. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Mr. Chmielowski, is there a reason that you didn't come before us and present those changes with the intention that you guys are thinking to go that direction?
So we're still in the conceptual phases of design, and so we haven't quite worked out what that's going to look like. But we have no problems working with staff to sort through how that money will be spent.
Okay, currently the motion is just to bring it into conformance. It doesn't discuss specifically like, oh, let's do a sidewalk, or let's bring the landscaping up to code, to current code.
Correct. We have not sorted out what those items will be.
Okay. Could you talk more about the sidewalk?
So right now we have a pedestrian connection that goes from the front door all the way out to Bryn Mawr, which follows the driveway. We didn't have a pedestrian connection to Northern Lights at the time that we built the facility because there is quite a bit of elevation change. And there was also a request from the neighboring properties to maintain the fence along Northern Lights. And this property is kind of oddly shaped. There's like a flagpole section that goes along Northern Lights. So it is something we can look at, but it may not be feasible to make a connection.
Because of elevation change?
Because of the
and
elevation
request
difference.
from the community to maintain some sort of physical barrier between.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks. Anything else? Ms. Sullivan?
Do you have the 150 hose extension from the two roads to the back of the building? I was trying to scale, but,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
do you have to have the 150 feet hose from the fire truck?
Yeah, so that's why we're adding the fire
That's
lane
why.
along the south is to meet that 150 foot
Okay, I was
requirement.
trying to scale and it's close.
It meets
I
it.
didn't know if it was-
And we actually had a pre-application meeting with the city and fire was there, so they were in agreement with what we were proposing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Seeing and hearing nothing else, we will open the public hearing. Thank you, Ms. Chmielowski. If anybody is here to speak, come on forward, and if you could state your name for the record and spell it, please, that would be great.
Joanna, one word, Nardini, Nardini. I'm currently on the executive board of the community council, and I also I'm a next door neighbor of Winterberry.
Okay, great. Are you speaking on behalf of the community council?
No, I noticed in the packet that was distributed, it said public comments, that there was no comment from the community council, but there was a letter that we submitted, and that was in the packet that was sent to the community council. And I have a copy of it here. And the only concern that we had about it, we're not against the project. We think it's a great idea to add school classrooms and help with education of our children. The only thing we were concerned about is, traffic and being the concerns about the neighborhood, because the traffic that goes on there, I know that there's not going to be an addition to students or anything in the to the school, but currently the parents, they have to bring their students to school, and we were concerned about their speeding. There's a stop sign at the end of the cul-de-sac. When they did the project originally, they didn't put a curb in, so it's one smooth path from Wesleyan to the school, and they speed up there. They don't observe the stop sign coming back. During the winter, there was a snow berm in the center of the cul-de-sac, and one of the parents ended up on top of the snow pile just from Wesleyan, which isn't a very long distance. But anyway, and also on the back, that little strip that runs along Northern Lights, currently they have storage on that little piece of property, and they don't upkeep that portion. It just runs wild in the summer. And they do have things that are stored back there, and I think that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. The only other concern is we would like to know if there's a contact at the at MOA during construction that we can, if we have any concerns. When that's going on. We know it's going to go on, and so we're kind of concerned about that. And they said something about snow storage and runoff or whatever. This just recently, during when we had they removed the snow pile in the cul-de-sac, and there was a big puddle there. And so they did clear the snow, and that helped with drainage. There's still a little bit of a pool there. So anyway, that's my concerns.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for coming out. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Nardini? Yes. Oh, I was just asking the commission, yeah. I think you're good that, Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the chair, for Ms. Nardini, the case file, the planning department received 2 comments. They were from the same, Judith Deaver and Jeff and Judy. They were both concerned about congestion from vehicles during drop-off time. So no letter from the community council was received. I just would, because we really value community council comments and all public comments, and closely pay attention to those. I just would suggest to the community council, make sure that you send that to the planning department.
With the packet that went to the community council.
So when Ms. Chmielowski submitted the application with the request that's before you, the planning department sent that to the community council and the traffic department and all others and started a file. And everything related to this case was all put in the same place and is now before you in this stapled packet. So I'm not sure what Madam is referring to, but I just, what I tell all members of the public and the community councils, we accept written comments in all forms, but make sure to provide them to us. We're not at the community council meeting to add them to the packet. You just have to provide them to us in order for them to be added. I see you shaking your head, but there's comments from different reviewing agencies, but I don't see anything from the community council unless I'm just misunderstanding her comment.
Thank you. Ms. Nardini, would it be possible if I read that letter that you're explaining is from the community council, and what we'll do is
So this was sent to the president.
Thank you.
At the FCC, and
Okay, so this is,
and then it's the last page.
Oh, okay.
And it has the attendance sheets from the council meeting and
Is it right before this page? Oh, I see. It's actually in here.
oh, it is.
It's right here.
Oh, great. Thank you, Ms. Ream. What page is that on? Thank you, Ms. Nardini.
And that's what I was going to ask her to clarify. So, Ms. Nardini, thank you. She's clarified that the letter that was written January 11th, 2018 actually came with the original packet from the applicant.
Mr. Whitfield?
It doesn't, my apologies, there is no page number. We'll have to, I could count back, but it's in the, here.
Oh, it's after the drawings. Looks like it's after the drawings.
Okay, so it's in the back, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 6 pages from the back. You just got it. That was it. One more. Yeah.
Got it. Sure enough. So we do have it. Thank you.
It was submitted with the application.
Oh, not everybody has it. That's even more confusing. So what I can do is you have it. Mr. Winchester, do you have it? We'll just take 5 minutes here and let the commission read it and, yeah. Everybody's reviewed it and ready to move forward. If there's any questions.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry that this is, held us up, but, so the application submitted by Ms. Chmielowski, she's got her application form, the narrative, and the very last page, and then the plans, and the very last page of my packet is the community meeting invitation, it looks like, from Jeff Moore, project manager, Criterion General. So they're inviting people to the University Area Community Council at 7 p.m. for a community meeting to discuss this project. That's part of the public process that the project team makes a presentation to the community council. And they send out an invitation inviting people to attend it. We give them the list on who to mail it to. I still don't see anything written from the community council.
I can bring this over to you.
No, it is. It's just it came with by the applicant. We usually put it in a different part in the report, say this was provided by the. Okay.
Okay, so now it's resolved. So it was just basically we have it and there's no question. So we're gonna move on. Thank you, Ms. Ms. Sullivan. Thank you. Thank you for raising your hand.
I'm just looking here in the findings. Item number 3, the site plan address any significant adverse impacts that can reasonably be anticipated to result from the use by mitigating or offsetting those impacts to the maximum extent. The last speaker talked a little about having some drainage issues where the snow was being stored. Laquita would like to ask if you have
If you could hold for a minute, we're still in public testimony and we had one.
Can I ask her? The public testimony again, what's exactly the issues with drainage? And then I will go back to Laquita.
Ms. Nardini might need to come back up.
Yes.
That's the scenario.
So from what I understood, she was saying that there was snow stored out in the cul-de-sac, which is the right-of-way. That wouldn't be snow storage, that's from the school. The school stores its snow on site, and everything drains to a storm drain system that's on site.
Okay, thank you. I just needed to clarify that.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Nardini? None. Okay. Any other public testimony? Nobody is walking down? Still nobody is walking down. So we will close public testimony, and Ms. Chmielowski has 8 minutes of rebuttal.
So I just want to clarify some of Ms. Nardini's concerns about the traffic. So as part of the development in 2012, we did a full traffic impact analysis, which looked at on-site queuing. And so part of that is traffic control by the school. And so I know the principal and the staff has ongoing efforts to work with parents to help control the traffic in the area. And the principal was at the community council meeting that evening and indicated that they have ongoing efforts. So. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for the petitioner? I have one. What is the condition of the existing landscape that's on site right now?
So I know there's a couple areas where there are sheds being stored within the landscape area, so the school is aware that they will need to relocate those. But as far as I understand, the landscaping meets the requirement and is intact.
So on the north side of the parking lot and the east side of the parking lot, all of that is as represented on L 1.0 dated 2/23/2012.
Correct.
Alive, thriving.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Anybody else? Nope? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to close the public hearing, and the case rests with the commission. Looking for a motion. Thank you, Ms. Ream. Do we have a second? Ms. Sullivan. Thank you, Ms. Ream. You please state your motion.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so case number 2018-0027, the amendment to a de facto major site plan review for an elementary and middle school in the College Gate subdivision. I move to approve this case subject to the 4 conditions of approval provided by the department.
Thank you. We have a motion for approval for 2018-027 with the conditions 1 through 4. Would you like to speak to your motion, Ms. Ream?
Yes, I plan to support the motion. I believe they have met all of the requirements they need to. Based on the current code, some findings, they do meet AMC 2103-180F for site plan review, AMC 2105-040EB for use-specific standards for an elementary or middle school. They've met the code for the landscaping, their existing landscaping, so I think for all intents and purposes, this project meets what they needed to do to add their fire lane.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Would you like to speak to your second, please?
Yes, I intend to support the motion. I would like to add that there's no drainage impacts to the adjacent properties, residential. The project, it looks like it wouldn't have an addition. I don't think it's going to really affect. They did a very good job integrating the new architecture with the old architecture, and that's it.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Morse.
I would like to add to the findings that with the department recommendations, number 4, it was discussed today that although they will be bringing the site into closer compliance, the sidewalk along Northern Lights was discussed and does seem improbable. So if that could be in the findings, that they will be bringing the site into compliance, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the sidewalk on Northern Lights.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Winchester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to add a further findings of fact regarding the site has been approved with a traffic impact analysis completed and then secondarily reviewed as provided by the petitioner, and that the project will not change the TIA or increase traffic into the area. And I think that there's also been testimony related to the fact that the school is doing a great job of integrating with the local community and ensuring that traffic is not a major factor.
Great, thank you. I'll add a finding that this addition does not add any students to the existing school, and the maximum enrollment is 246 students, which requires 2 acres, and the site contains 3.2 acres. That's all I have. Seeing that nobody has anything else, if we could vote. That motion passes. Thank you for coming out, Mr. Chmielowski. Okay, so the next one, that to there, is case number 2018-0030. Appeal to the Urban Design Commission of an administrative decision denying a zoning variance from AMC 2111-070D to permit an existing sign to exceed height restrictions by 10 feet. We have staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The petitioner is appealing the planning director's decision to deny an administrative variance to allow a freestanding sign to exceed the height restriction by 10 feet to comply with the municipal standards in accordance with the procedures of Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21, Chapter 3, subsection 240J1D. Some background on the case. Glacier Sign and Lighting was issued a sign permit on March 8, 2002 for an illuminated double-face freestanding sign with message center to be installed at 5401 Northwood Drive for Diamond Airport parking. At the time of installation, the sign was compliant with municipal code. However, after the sign was installed, several changes to municipal sign regulations were adopted. Because of these regulation changes, this sign was considered non-conforming as of October 1st, 2003. Furthermore, the adoption of AO 2005-163 S2 on May 16, 2006 established an amortization period of 10 years to come into compliance in accordance with Anchorage Municipal Code. The petitioner applied for a time extension for sign amortization in accordance with the provisions of Municipal Code. This case was first heard by the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals on May 11, 2017, and was unanimously denied by the Board on June 8, 2017. Following this decision, the petitioner was required to immediately bring the sign into full compliance or seek a variance for any remaining illegal non-conforming characteristics. The petitioner has applied for a sign permit to reduce the size of the existing sign. The plans submitted with the sign permit application show a modified sign that has an area of 199 square feet and a height of 35 feet. However, the proposed sign still exceeds the maximum allowable height by 10 feet. The maximum allowable height for freestanding signs within an I-1 district is 25 feet. As such, the petitioner applied for an administrative sign variance to allow a freestanding sign to exceed the height limitation by 10 feet. This variance was denied by the director as the variance standards were not substantially met. The petitioner disagrees with the findings of case 2017-0134 and is appealing the administrative decision to the commission. The department agrees with staff findings of case 2017-0134 and recommends denial of this appeal. And it is important to note that plans for the new sign were not included in the staff packet by mistake, but have been provided to the commissioners tonight. And we do have one additional public comment that was received today. It's up to the board whether or not you'd like to take a short recess to review these comments, should the board feel it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go on that last part with the comments. Does everybody like to see those comments? That's a nod from everybody. So we'll take a 5-minute recess, and or 10. Let's do 10. And then if you could, I presume you have copies. What? Oh, this is the letter from. This is the letter. Yeah. So we'll take a short 10-minute recess and then come back. Thanks. Everybody had enough time yet? Ms. Sullivan?
Still thinking.
You're still thinking or reading?
I'm good.
You're good? Mr. Winchester, all right. Great, thank you. Okay, so we had staff presentation. So now do we have questions for staff after we read that? Nope. Okay, can we have the petition? Oh, Ms. Sullivan, thank you. Yep. Oh. Go.
So, I would guess, you provided this sketch where they are kind of showing what they're proposing, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And that's from the petitioner?
Correct.
So are they using the same structure, and that's what they're not lowering the sign more?
Through the chair, I believe the petitioner can specify a little more on exactly which existing materials are being reused, but to my understanding, they are trying to reuse as many existing materials of the sign just to cut costs and to...
Okay, we'll wait for the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is the petitioner here? Come forward, yep, come on forward and state your name for the record and
Okay, it's, Matt Samuel, Mattsamuel.
Great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I've worked over the last year or so with members of the planning department, code enforcement, land use review and planning and zoning to come up with a solution so we could downsize the existing sign. So we brought the square footage down to under 200 square foot, added the pole wrap. But the additional height is required as we believe there's some unique physical attributes to accessing this location. So the first probably contention we have with the report was the description of adjacent roadway. So I do agree with staff that Minnesota Drive should not be considered, which is mentioned on page 13. But I don't think enough consideration was given to the link road whereby drivers go from Minnesota to West International, and that's on page 28 of the report. I think the assumption of the findings is that everyone is travelling east-west along West International Airport Road. However, we'd say that a lot of people use the link road that comes from the north, joining into West International. When you link there's only about 400 feet between joining West International and then where you have to make the turn to the property. So without the additional height of the sign, you would not see it if you were coming down the link road. There's a dip there and a concrete barrier, so you would not have much time to react. Having 400 feet to cross 3 lanes is asking quite a lot. So the additional sign height allows people to prepare for merging, and it also gives them another option here on the link road. You can actually take the left link, because you can see the sign there, and come up to the lighting signals, and then take a right also onto West International, which again is a lot safer option than I know some of the larger vehicles and trailers do, because you don't have to then go across 3 lanes. So I think this sort of demonstrates that the strict interpretation of adjacent road could be widened in this case where people have to merge and make decisions prior to getting onto West International. That's why I think the link between Minnesota and International should be considered and not solely West International Airport Road. And this is not a minor consideration for us. For example, just using things like Google Maps and other similar services show the quickest route from North Anchorage or Eagle River is to go through downtown, then Minnesota, and then taking that off ramp. And we know just from our customers that 50% of ours actually come from Eagle River or the Valley. So it's not just a few people in our eyes, it is an important consideration. The second contention probably have is in regarding to the stopping distances going the other way, which is mentioned on page 13 and also on page 27. When travelling to the east, the sign is obscured by many trees from Connors Lake Park that border the park there. As I guess the statement here is, there's 270 feet of road available, and at 50 miles an hour, it would take 229 feet to stop in normal conditions. This is what the report stated. That doesn't account for adverse weather or snow and ice, which is on the ground for many months of the year. So reducing the sign height further will reduce that visibility even more. I think staff said it's 3.7 seconds mentioned in the report, so that is going to reduce that even further as the sign will be obscured by the trees that are there. And I think just one final thing we'd like to add is that, our neighbours over the road, such as the Microtel, which they have the same topographic issues that we have, and access, and trees, and they benefit from a sign in excess of the height code. So we're not asking for anything that our neighbours don't have, or any special things just for us.
Great, thank you. You have 5 minutes left for rebuttal. Do we have any questions of the petitioner, for the petitioner? Seeing none, I have one. Mr. Samuel, on 27, page 27 and 28, it talks about the distance and that sort of thing. What is, in your opinion or your interpretation of desirable time and height, and what is the distance that you would prefer to see there? For site signage, so basically what page 27 is describing is that 3.7 seconds of sign visibility is not enough. In your opinion, what would be enough?
I don't know what would be enough, but I wouldn't want to reduce that down anymore.
Correct.
That's for sure.
I'm just curious if 8 seconds?
The more time you have to make a decision, the better.
Okay, so I haven't really explored that too much. Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, so, Ms. Morse, thank you. Whew, we need a flashing light on this thing.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Mr. Samuel, have you seen, it's only fair that he would have seen this letter, right?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen the letter dated April 10?
I just saw that this evening when I came in.
Okay, have you had a chance to review it?
Briefly.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you take a look at the map at the back of the letter?
Let me... Yeah.
So the case made in the letter, my takeaway was that you have enough road frontage to have 2 signs at the reduced signage level, and placing 2 signs on that site would give you more opportunity for visibility coming from different ways. Is that?
But if they were lower, you wouldn't see them. So that's the thing. As you come around that corner, you're facing the entrance to our property and the sign. So if they were both lower, that takes away that. You don't see them anyway. Having an additional one that's not visible. You have 2 then that are not visible coming down the link road. So I would, say have 1 that's visible and helping people make that decision and safely navigate merging or taking the alternative route up to the traffic lighting signals and then joining the West International Airport Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question for staff. Is there a requirement in the sign standard that says that the face of the sign has to be perpendicular to the adjacent travelway?
Through the chair, no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will now open it up to public comment, testimony. People come forward, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. If you spell it too, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Margaret Auth. I'm speaking tonight representing Spinar Community Council. I've been asked by the chair to appear tonight.
Okay, great. Could you spell your last name for the record, please?
A-U-T-H.
A-U-T-H. Thank you.
The Spinard Community Council has always been opposed to the diamond parking sign, and it started when it was first erected. We vehemently, and the neighborhood vehemently, fought against this sign, and we felt it went against the vote of the people in 1998 when the state of Alaska voted 72% against billboards, and we felt that this was a violation of the spirit of that law. It was after that that the municipality went about to change the sign ordinance. So true, this sign was erected before the sign ordinance, but it was given enough time to amortize, and we were very pleased when code enforcement, through the letter of Mr. Potter, that he had gone to protest this because he was aware of the feelings of the community. And we feel that at the time that this was heard before the Board of Zoning and Planning Examiners and Appeals, last year was already more than a year in violation. And now here we are, almost exactly a year later, hearing again about this same sign. It's a source of frustration that there is one business that is seeming to fail to follow the ordinance. There's a lot of businesses that are on very busy roads, and actually there's a lot of businesses that are in very clustered signage. If you go further down International and you see those plazas that are close to Arctic and International, there's a lot of signage in those malls, and it's hard to make those out too, but they're not coming before you asking for some kind of dispensation to make their signs larger and more prominent, because there might be 10 businesses in one mall. So I think that we need to take into account that there's always going to be a problem of travel time and people seeing a sign. It's always going to be a problem for merchants. But as someone who lives very close to this property, we walk this all the time, and actually DOT recently removed an immense amount of trees on the north side of the street. So as you're starting to hook into West International, they leveled all those trees down. So now the line of vision has been dropped because they're all gone. And so there is that. It does make it easier to see the signage. And as somebody who walks that almost 7 days a week, so I go on the trail with my husband, I don't think I've ever seen anybody that looked like they were overshooting and didn't get the turn off because of that. I think that's never been a problem. Watching the traffic, and the people that want to utilize this business don't have enough signage to know that that's where that business is. But it's just a frustration on the part of this community that they were given plenty of time to amortize it out. There was the understanding between the municipality and themselves, and now they keep asking for more time, more consideration. And so we're just asking you to please heed what has been found already in other decisions and by the planning department, that they were given enough time and enough forewarning so that they can make the changes and make the business plans that they make. And this is a huge corporation with over 1,000 parking lots, structures, and buildings. So they know what they're doing. They make long-term planning, that they have plenty of time to amortize this out, to make this part of their design plans for the future. So we're just asking you to please go ahead and to please go along with what Hal Hart, the Planning Department, and the Board of Examiners and Appeals came to. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And if there are any questions of the commission, nope. Thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Looks like there's not. Come on forward. If you could state your name for the record and spell it, please.
Good evening. My name is Irene Pearson Gamble. I am a homeowner in the Benson subdivision. I ditto everything that my neighbor has said.
Great. Could you spell your last name for the record, please?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Pearson is spelled like person with 2 S's, and dash Gamble like Las Vegas. You'll remember that, right, Jerry? So I do ditto everything that Margaret has mentioned also. I'll start with kind of the idea that, as Mr. Samuel said, that if you're looking to park your car when you're going to the airport, you'll miss the sign because you're going at 50 miles an hour. But if you're driving to the airport and you're looking to drop your car off as an Anchorageite, you will probably not be doing 50 right there because you know already that that parking area is there. There's hardly anything else around there. It does catch your eye. So I don't think the speeding issue is anything valid to say, oh, the sign has to be bigger, because if you're driving and you're driving 50 miles an hour, you won't notice it. But if you think about television ads these days, I just compared the split seconds that ads come up, and you think, whoa, what was that? But that's enough time. You got it. You don't need to dwell on it. I think that's an irrelevant topic for speed. The other one is that the billboard signage is just so huge that many people over the, 29 years, have commented about it. It's just too big. And Alaska's, visual beauty and everything, when you come from the airport and you're a newcomer or a new visitor, that is not a sign that I think is welcoming. It's just like, whoop, you want to see the mountains and the trees. And I understand the business aspect, and of course we want to include businesses that, make a living and that we can all, get jobs and have the services we need, but not to the detriment of the aesthetics that I think our area has. And Spenard is not known for its aesthetics, but it can be, and it should be. So anyway, just history. I was born in Anchorage before statehood, so guess how old I am. My family home is in line sight of that sign, and my parents bought that property partly because of the view over the mountain near the airport. We're from Sweden, we're immigrants, and lots of our relatives and visitors come, and of course they rave, oh my God, it's so beautiful. When that sign went up, and my parents were in their home, they have a bay window, and they look out to the southwest or southeast, that sign is just too big. So my mother complained about it constantly. We would call and make comments. And then we heard, oh, it was grandfathered in, and maybe the mayor that was in charge had buddies and deals, and and that's all hearsay. I think I went to high school with that person, but anyway, it just seemed like it was allowed, and nobody wanted that except for maybe the owner. So, no good. My mother complained about that sign. She passed away about 3 years before that sign came down. And now I wish she was still alive. She was 92. My dad was 96. And they both would have been thrilled to see that sign down. So it didn't make it before they died, but I'm here now. So that's everything I can think of.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Person Gamble.
Yeah. Any questions?
Any questions?
Don't do it.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Anybody else? Looks like there's another gentleman coming down. Come on down and state your name for the record and spell it, please. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. My name is Robert Auth, A-U-T-H. I'm the husband of Margaret, who just spoke, and I'm also speaking against this variance, speaking individually. This, as you know, this sign has been there since 2002, and so the petitioner has had 16 years of non-conforming signage at this business. As my wife said, we do walk along the trail along International, and especially where Minnesota Drive comes in. Minnesota Drive exit is the link road that's been referred to. There is no visibility problem at all from that vantage point. And in fact, these photographs overstate it, even because the railroad has recently removed an enormous amount of vegetation along the railroad tracks, which are along there too. So there is no visibility issue at all. The sign is is very easy to see. And also from Mr. Potter's picture especially, you see how close residential is to that sign, just a little bit across the International Airport road. And so it's very intrusive to have a 45-foot sign and a 35-foot sign as well. I mean, the neighbors in this area have to put up with a lot living near the airport and near airport development, and it should at least be conforming airport-related development. And so I'm against the variance. Thank you.
Great, thank you for coming out today, Mr. Oth. Any questions from the commission? Nope. Thank you. I see Mr. Potter coming to the stand.
My name is Tim Potter, representing myself tonight, P-O-T-T-E-R. It's going to be hard for me to do everything I'd love to say in 3 minutes, so if you've got a couple hours, that'd be good. But I'll try and be brief, and I appreciate the fact that you read the letter as I tried to summarize both the history of how we got here to tonight, as well as what you're really being asked to do. You're being asked to overturn an administrative denial for a 10-foot sign height variance. So in effect, you are acting as the variance review body. You're overturning the planning director's administrative decision, grants them a variance of 10 feet, which is 40% of the sign height that is permitted to be conforming. That is a huge variance in and of itself. So as you look at this picture, don't compare the diminution of the huge sign that was bigger than the footprint of my first house that I bought in Spenard in 1983 on posts, but look at the fact that it's still 10 feet higher than what conforming is, a 40% variance, and that's important when considering a variance. You're entering a period in a position of a slippery slope that if this city is willing to grant variances on the basis of lack of real factual data or evidence, that you can't see 12 acres of cars that are parked there, with a building-mounted sign also that has not been mentioned on the building that faces out to International Airport Road, then we really need to consider what we're doing. Sign height was a big issue, and I served on the committees that worked on it. The reason I filed my complaint was because this was such an egregious sign that was placed. It was an attack and affront upon all of us that live here. When I went to the city and asked code enforcement what they were going to do when the amortization period came up, they said, we're not going to do anything. We don't have the budget or the people to do anything. We'll respond to complaints. I assumed that was going to be the answer, so I handed Jack Frost the complaint and started this. It's 23 months after that, and the sign, while diminished in size now, on a single pole, is still being asked to be 40% greater than the maximum height that's allowed by code. There is a conforming alternative, which I've identified in my information. They can put a second sign, full size, 25 feet high, 200 square feet. And if you'd like to ask me a question to further explain the photo,
Yep.
I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Do we have any questions from the commission?
Well, I would like Mr.
Ms. Sullivan.
Mr. Tim Potter to continue explaining what he was explaining.
Try to be brief too, Mr. Potter.
I will try and be brief. I know that I have a reputation for not being brief, but this one has stuck in my craw for the 14 or 15 years that it has been there as an affront to the community. And watching and waiting to see if this corporation would be a responsible member of the community and go by what the law says. They had their amortization period. They did not take the sign down. It says it must be brought into compliance by May 16th, 2016. It's almost 2 years later, and it's still not in compliance. So on the photo, I drive this road a lot, but I went out again on Sunday, and I did 10 turns coming southbound on Minnesota, taking the link road, which they have indicated is the real bugaboo and the point of their appeal. They are concerned that their site is not visible from the link road, and they have a significant amount of customers that come that direction. The first red mark, which is just north and east of the gore point of where the ramp road separates from the hard curl to the left, that is where you can see their existing sign. When you go just a little bit further, almost to where the trail underpass is, you can see what would be the northeast corner of their property, which is fully open and visible, and there could be a conforming 25-foot high sign, 200 square feet, which they are authorized to do. They could go get a permit tomorrow and do it. And with a conforming alternative, most, if not all, boards, commissions, Board of Adjustments, and courts require and force the appellant or the party applying for something to show why the conforming alternative is not reasonable and doesn't work. And I would submit to you tonight that even Alaska Park, which is a newer parking location at the corner of Spenard and West International, has a fairly large site that used to be the Armory. They have 2 conforming signs at that location. Didn't cost them too much, obviously. I think that is evidence that we have retailers and business interests around this community that have large parcels that have 2 signs. It didn't bust their income and their revenue stream, and it needs to be looked at, and it is reasonable. The test is there. I do not see any compelling data, photos, or evidence of any kind that if I were in your position, I would find that I would grant overturning the denial of the administrative variance and grant them a 40% variance on that sign. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Potter. Do we have any questions for Mr. Potter? Ms. Sullivan, it says you have a question here.
Oh, sorry. I did.
Nope, okay. Thank you, Mr. Potter, for coming out tonight. Okay, anybody else? Looks like half of our audience has left the building. They're missing the best part of the meeting. So we will close the we'll close the rebuttal first, and then we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Shamma, you have, it appears, 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. I was going to clarify from a few people, we're not asking for more time. And it's been mentioned that the sign is still is too large, but we've already made that move last year to bring it down to the 200 square foot. So that has been completed. That was done straight after we got the results of the hearing last year. And I do think we are in a different set of circumstances than it's been mentioned with Alaska Park, where they're in a lot of places are a road junction where the speed limit is a lot lower. This is pretty unique here, where you've got the intersection of a number of 3-lane highways merging in. That is quite different from the rest of Anchorage. And as I say, when people are travelling there at 50 miles an hour or more, and this does not show the sight lines. I know a couple of the testimony says the sign is visible, and that is correct. Exactly it is visible now. You can see it. If we are to reduce it 10 feet, then you won't be visible. So that's where I have to I'll end it there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Samuel? Nope. Okay, thank you. So we have case number 2018-0030 in front of us now. We've heard public testimony, we've heard the rebuttal, and the public hearing is now closed. What would the commission like to do? In particular, we're looking for a motion. I do have a question for staff. So we are not providing a variance. We're deciding an appeal of administrative decision, not a variance, correct?
Mr. Chair, by overturning the administrative decision, you are in essence granting a sign variance.
Correct, but it's not a variance hearing before us. We don't need to provide, or perhaps you would enlighten us that we do need to provide findings of all of the 5 standards for a variance.
Mr. Chair, you do not need to provide 5 findings. What's before the board tonight is whether or not the board agrees or disagrees with staff findings for the administrative variance, which are 3 standards, A, B, and C, which begin on page 13 of the staff packet.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Mr. Winchester, you have a motion. Would you like to state your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would, as to the case 2018-0030, I would move for approval and would be not supporting my motion. I find that the staff's recommendations, 1 through, are in tune with what findings of fact are, and I can speak to those in a moment.
Great, thank you. So we have a motion for approval for 2008-0030, appeal of an administrative decision denying a variance from the height restrictions of AMC 21-11070 to allow a freestanding sign to exceed the height restrictions by 10 feet in accordance with the procedures of AMC 2103-240J1D. Now, would you like to speak to your motion? Please.
You read it all. Thank you very much. Yes, as I said, I do not intend to support the motion. I find that as to the accordance with AMC 2103-240J3, paragraph A, special topographic circumstances exist that would result in a material impairment of visibility of a conforming sign from adjacent roadway. Find this standard is not met. Certainly appears, based on both testimony tonight and information presented, the topographic circumstances do not keep the signage from being seen at an appropriate spot at the link road, which seems to be the largest place of contention that you can see all the way to the ground, actually. In fact, on the northeast corner of the property, far in excess of the distance required to meet the requirements to make the turn. As far as item number B, there is no reasonable conforming alternative to the variance. The standard is not met. We find that there is other conforming alternatives that can be met, including 2 signs that could meet all the current standards of Municipal AMC 2103-240, and there is not a financial burden being asked of to provide those 2 signs versus the one at the 35 feet. And then as far as number C, any setback variance does not result in encroachment on public right-of-way. This standard is really not applicable to the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morris, would you like to speak to your second?
I would, thank you, Chair. In addition to Commissioner Winchester's findings, I would like to add that AMC 2111-070 states that this zoning district does in fact allow the highest sign height in Anchorage, so there isn't a higher sign type that our city has accepted to be allowable.
Great. Thank you. Any other commissioners have any findings or comments? I will say a couple. We've had 4 people testify tonight in the public comments. All 4 of them opposed. 3 of them were representing themselves. 1 was representing the Spenard Community, the Spenard Community Council. I do not intend to support the motion for the reasons that have already been stated. I believe that there's some conforming alternatives. There's no special conditions that would allow this. It is the tallest zoning district to allow the highest sign. So based on that, I do not support the motion. And based on that, with no other people looking at me to comment, we will vote. Thank you. That motion does not pass. So the administrative decision is upheld and the sign height is not allowed as submitted. Thank you for coming out tonight. Next on the agenda is, let's see, Mr. Davis. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for making room for this informational item. I'm just going to briefly pass out your copy of the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan and go over a few highlights from that regarding urban design, and then just give the Commission a heads up about a couple of upcoming efforts to make the plan a reality. Sharon is passing out copies. Thanks, Sharon. In 2016 and 2017, the Urban Design Commission took an interest in the developing plan, and we're grateful for that. Commission, led by the chair and Commissioner Miller, took a look at the plan and made comments. And the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed all of the Urban Design Commission's recommendations from the resolution that you provided. And most every recommendation that the Urban Design Commission made, the Commission at the Planning and Zoning Commission forwarded to the Assembly. In other words, the draft plan was changed to address the comments. And the Assembly unanimously approved the plan in September with very few amendments of its own. Inside the back cover of your plan, there's a small version of the land use plan map folded in there. Both the plan and an interactive zoom-in version of the land use plan map and the other maps that appear in the plan are available online. Easiest way to get to it is just Google Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan, and you get to it all. We're still updating the interactive map to reflect the Assembly's several amendments that it made, but that should be done by the end of this month. So everything online. Also, every comment that the Urban Design Commission made and the response by Planning and Zoning Commission and staff and what changes were made to the plan, we have that documented for you in, there's an Appendix F issue response. So you can also look at what Urban Design Commission requested, how that was responded to, and how it led to a change in the plan. Just really briefly, just to crack open a few parts of this plan that relate to urban design. So this is Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan, but this plan is really breaking out of the silo of land use and as if it were separate from transportation, as if it were separate from the character and physical development pattern of the city. It's really integrating urban design in as an essential characteristic of each type of place that we envision in 2040. So the colors on the land use plan map represent real places, a real three-dimensional city that we would like to work towards. And so this plan, right from the get-go in its goals and policies, if you turn to page 15, this plan introduces a set of new goals and policies to supplement those of Anchorage 2020. These are 10 land use goals, but as the memorandum that's placed on the inside cover of your plan discusses, the memorandum starts near the bottom of page 1, and then there's a backside. The first item is page 15, and this list of 10 items is just 10 highlights of sections or passages or pages in the plan that most directly relate to urban design. The policies in this plan could come into play in case reviews that the Urban Design Commission looks at, depending on whether the approval criteria in Title 21 list consistency, conformity to the plan, to the comprehensive plan as approval criteria. So parts of this plan can play into your decisions. In addition, the Urban Design Commission is among its roles is that the Commission can advise the Assembly and Planning and Zoning Commission regarding future changes to Title 21 that affect city design. And in fact, a lot of this plan is leading to exactly that kind of action. But it starts on page 15 with sort of overall chart, looks like a pinball machine of all the policies and actions in this plan, and then it proceeds from 16, starting with goal 1 and goes through 10 goals. Each of these goals is accompanied by numbered policies. So these goals and policies can be used in discretionary reviews, and in fact, Planning and Zoning Commission and possibly Urban Design Commission may see them in staff reports that may play into cases. The second part, 3 parts of the plan, is essentially your key to the land use map. It basically describes the places on the map, each land use designation. And on page 29, right at the beginning of section 2, page 29 of your plan, the plan tells you how to read each of those descriptions. It's called Creating Great Places, and these designations really are about creating very real three-dimensional places. But on page 29, in the far right column upper, it's describing something called character. So each land use designation has a subsection called character, and this is describing what that means to this plan. Most of the rest of the plan is describing each of those land use designations. A lot of those land use designations in their character subsection refer to something called shared infill design principles. And if you turn to page 34, 35, you'll see a kind of a centerfold fold-out of what those are. Those are also really important to a lot of our land use designations. So many of them that involve growing through infill and redevelopment, through infill in our existing neighborhoods and business districts, involve making that development work within the context of an existing neighborhood, or in the context of it trying to create more transportation choices, so we can literally fit more development in a livable way, equitable way in the city. So these design principles, you'll see a lot of those land use designations refer back to them. And I think the Commission made a comment or two about these, and those comments were incorporated into the plan. Just about finished here, but The land use plan map has these 18 color-coded kinds of places, right? They're all color-shaded. But overlaying those are 4 growth-supporting features, or growth-supporting overlays, as we call them. And those are listed in your memo, but they begin on page 60. And there are 4 of them, and those are really dependent on emphasis on walkable urban design and other urban design characteristics. I think that urban design really makes these what they are. They are transit-oriented development or transit-supported development corridors. Secondly, something called greenway-supported development patterns, which we really beefed up with a lot more photos and clarity in our explanation about what that is. For example, restoring parts of Fish Creek or trails along that corridor through Midtown as we redevelop Midtown. Thirdly, I'd like you to look at page 64, 65. A large part of the older parts of town on your land use map, they're bounded by this brown, a brown boundary. They basically cover those walkable, somewhat urban parts of older parts of the city that have a grid or near grid, a much finer street grid. Some of them are the more regular block areas like Fairview and downtown, and others are like Spenard or Airport Heights with a little bit more of a regular grid with less sidewalks. But this plan is the first land use plan, a citywide land use plan, to call out very basic different kinds of character areas in town. And we found about 4 overall, but one of them has to do with these traditional urban walkable neighborhoods. So this is an overlay feature which calls for something different in the way of how development, infill development, goes forward in these areas. Even though, for example, South Addition has the same color land use designation as parts of the area just south of Diamond High School near Diamond Boulevard, same land use category, sort of a mixed residential, low moderate. It's got this traditional neighborhood design boundary around it, and that calls for some very different type of development to really leverage its existing development pattern to allow more infill, more of a walkable environment. That could lead to different kinds of zoning districts or zoning standards for that area as opposed to South Anchorage, for example. One of the weaknesses in our current Title 21 is that it's one size fits all. If you're R2M, no matter where you are in the city, that's what you have, that's what you're going to do. So this is really important. And then on page 65, it begins to talk about how AMATS is going to create a street typologies plan. Some streets are going to be different in character in terms of how much pedestrian facilities they have, depending on where they are in town. Lastly, I'll leave off with page 96. It's a one-page summary chart of all the actions, a giant table of actions. We call it our Skittles Chart. The memo that I handed you identifies the half-dozen actions that we intend to carry forward in long-range planning through the rest of 2018 into 2019 to carry out, implement this plan. More than a few of these are Title 21 code amendments that go through a public review process, and they do affect design. They do change design development standards in the code, and they like many amendments, they go through a typical public review draft process. We throw out the concept language, and we get feedback on that and before we go through a public hearing draft to Planning and Zoning Commission. The Urban Design Commission, if it is interested in these or in several of these, you're welcome to participate, and we're interested in getting your thoughts as members or as a body on our initial concepts of drafts. The most immediate ones include some changes to our parking code, some changes to make mixed-use district standards simpler for mixed-use projects, and then some changes to allow more compact housing in our R2M and R3 districts. Very near-term things. We're also looking at creating what we call a reinvestment focus area, a pilot area, the first of what we hope to be several of these. It'll be in central Spenard, we hope, around the Chugach Way area. So there'll be a lot of design, smaller master plan work in that area. So we are also looking at updating, finally, our downtown Anchorage zoning code. That we wanted to get to this year. We've scoped it out, and we think it's a bigger bite than we can chew. We've been directed to identify a scope of a project that would get a public process underway in 2019. So we're doing groundwork to start a downtown code update. But the 2018 immediate items are most of the other items listed here. UDC could, as a body, make comments on initial draft materials, or it could, as it did with this plan, identify a couple interested members to tag team it. And I'm certainly happy to bring each iteration public review draft materials to the commission for its comment. But I do warn you, our intent is to go forward, beginning this spring. I don't have dates, but would be within the next couple months. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I imagine that we would all be interested in this amount of the process. Just keep us informed, and if there's people on the commission that want to participate, they'll speak up now or in the future. I'm sure Mr. Miller, he was interested from the beginning. Have any questions for Ms.
Yes.
Sullivan?
I've been involved in a few projects downtown, which include residential. I know there's other projects. How are you guys dealing so far with the bulk requirements and, the density? I mean, what's happening with the rest of the projects? I just know what's happening with my projects, that it's very challenging to do density when we have all these bulk requirements. So how are you guys addressing? I mean, I know you guys are working towards getting there, but in the meantime, what are you guys doing to deal with the issues that we have right now?
The issues with the current downtown code that are...
Yeah, and the bulk requirements and density, what we're trying to... my understanding is that we're trying to create residential downtown, but there's issues with bulk requirements and density.
Yes, at this point, what we're trying to do is make sure we, myself or current planning staff, provide answers as quickly as we can when there's a lack of clarity or nobody can understand the existing code, and where a standard does appear to be problematic, to identify ways to what are the means we currently have in the code to provide for alternatives. The upper story bulk requirements is typically one where that's a challenge. So we're at the moment we're doing what we can within the confines of the existing code, and we really do. We're doing what we can to, as quickly as practical, get us to an updated zoning code for downtown. But for the time being, I think what we're doing is we're trying to work within the existing code.
Case by case, I assume. But thank you. This is change, so we got to get used again to where things are. But I hope that once we start going through and finding things, we can also send feedback. I think we just need to get used to the new document.
Yeah.
But, yeah, thank you for all your hard work.
Yes. Agreed. Thank you. Ms. Morse?
Thank you. Thank you. Tom, will we expect to see any staff comments that refer to the 2020 plan in the future?
Yes, thank you for asking that. So this plan, its subtitle is called A Supplement to Anchorage 2020, so which means Anchorage 2020 is still alive and very much in effect. And so as you read it, you'll find that it says that, its policies, its goals and policies supplement and work with 2020 policies. And you'll find that each of the 10 goals in here also lists the related 2020 policies by number. So it tries to cross-reference.
So keep them both handy.
Please do. And if you don't have a copy of 2020 or haven't received one, let me know.
Anything else? Nope. Mr. Winchester, yes, there you are, flashing.
Thank you. You mentioned the downtown, and this is again, the time frame you are setting. I was trying to look through quickly the action checklist. Is there one of those that specifically establishes a time frame for downtown rezoning? Thank you. Go ahead.
On page 96, the Skittles chart there.
Yes.
So there are actually a lot more actions in this plan. These are just the nearest term actions.
Gotcha.
In the third row down, there are two actions related to downtown. The first of the two actions related to downtown is action 3-2, and it's sitting there in the third row right on the boundary line between 2017 and 2018.
Okay.
And then the very last action in that row, 3-9 with the big red dollar sign on it, those two actions bracket sort of the beginning and end of what we would describe as the downtown code, downtown recode.
Okay.
So we hope to complete it. We'd like to complete it in 2019, but I'm just trying to be realistic. And that dollar bill means that we need help. We need professional assistance. And so we're looking at determining scope of what that would be and then requesting those resources of the assembly. Actions 3-2, 3-9. But at this point, we're believing that we're still in discussion with City Hall, but City Hall is believing they would like to combine those two into a single project. So there would be a single point of time at the end point of the project where we would adopt a new downtown code. And this chart is sort of reflecting what planning staff believes is likely to happen, that it would occur probably, and just knowing how long these things take, it would be potentially 2020. But the City Hall would like to see 2019. We've been through a number of code amendment processes, and it would be challenging, but as soon as possible.
Okay, great. Anything else, Mr. Winchester?
Thank you.
Nope. Thank you, Tom, for all your efforts and for coming tonight. I appreciate it. You've been working on it for a while, and it turned out good. I think it's good job. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I wanted to talk about was the Architectural Review Committee. It's been months and months since it was last brought up, and I sent an email out to you, I think about a couple of weeks ago, but I forgot to say in the email that I wanted to discuss it tonight. So I wanted to bring that up tonight, and there are many questions related to multifamily residential, and I think there was frustration among some of the UDC members in reference to seeing multifamily residential particularly out in Muldoon, the Creekside development, which is about the only multifamily we've seen in some time that's come to the commission for their review. And there was the comments that it looks like the same development over and over, the same design, I should say, over and over, and there was frustration among the commission about that. And so the issue was raised about forming an architectural review committee that would be part of the UDC that would review the designs and provide comment to the applicant. And so you wanted to know, how the planning department thought about that and what our reaction to that would be. And so I put it to the planning department. We had a meeting, and one of the questions raised was to allow architects on the architectural review committee that were not part of the committee. And there was quite a lot of hesitation from the planners, because if the committee was limited to only UDC members, it would be more workable. But as we talked about last time, a long time ago, there is no guarantee that architects will be on the commission. We have them now and have had them for the last, 8 years, 10 years, something like that. But prior to that, we really didn't. Outside architects may not always act impartially. We would have to determine that there are no conflicts of interest with those on the committee who are not commission members, which of course would be almost impossible to determine without going, looking into the background and what projects each architect has worked on and when. And so that would be a laborious process to try and accomplish. Also, the planners believe that creating an architectural review committee is premature at this point. There are design standards with menus in the code. There are many choices to get to reach a design. It was set up that way with many menu choices, and so you can do, choose 3 from column A and 4 from column B. So we thought, really, as the code is now, there's plenty of choices. Whether or not architects are taking advantage of all of those choices may be part of the issue. And there is still another alternative to the design standards, and that is that alternative equivalent compliance, meaning that if I'll just read it quickly. Alternative equivalent compliance procedure set forth in subsection 21 blah blah may be used to propose alternative means of complying with the intent of this section. Structures over 8 units may apply directly to the Urban Design Commission for alternative compliance with plans at least 15% complete. That includes exterior elevations and dimensions, floor plans, landscaping, and parking plans. So we have that already into the code in addition to all the menu choices that we have. So we thought it's not yet demonstrated that there is a problem with the process as outlined in Title 21, and applicants who wish to pursue this avenue could come before the UDC at 15% and make their case before the commission, and then they can decide whether or not they want to proceed with their plans as presented to the UDC, or they're going to take comment from the UDC and alter their plans and then come forward later after they've gone through the usual, and then go through the usual process with the UDC. So that was what I wanted to relate to the commission.
Great, thanks. Ms. Sullivan, is that the way that I was kind of remembering it was that we all knew that there was an alternative compliance and that we could go down that path, but it was trying to get before that level and to bounce ideas off of a more common background of architects.
Well, yes, and the worry was that the times that we have someone present to the Urban Design Commission, I mean, it hasn't, we have not been great in understanding the standards. Just because not everyone has the background of being an architect. So it comes to, how many architects we have? 2, 3?
3
Three
currently.
architects. I mean, right now we have 3 architects, so I guess it could work.
3.5. Okay, I'll count as a half.
Before I think they were less.
Yeah.
You know, she wasn't here, so it was a little more difficult. But I guess 3 architects could potentially take a decision that, you know, it's like when it comes to plants and trees, I'm just I listen to what Ed is saying and then try to understand the problem. But it makes sense. I mean, I know it's just sad that every time I look up, the buildings start looking the same, you know, like bump, recess. And I think we just need to start encouraging architects to go forward and have better results then.
And it spurred out of the last multifamily that was here that was basically complaining that the process was horrible and that the standards are horrible and then they can't design to it and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, okay, well, perhaps there needs to be a different process before you get to here to iron out all those things. And, you know, we're not going to rewrite the code, but I do think that it would still be, you know, beneficial. I don't know that
Yeah, and
I don't
they
know how to
were going.
accomplish it, but
They were not going by an alternative. I mean, that day I think they were going by just trying to comply with the code.
Right.
And something came out that staff was kind of counting feet. When they were doing other things, they were creating more articulation. So to me, they were doing more for articulating and having more aesthetics than the feet, the 2 feet that they were missing, that the code was like, you know, that's the issues that I you know, it's like the understanding that sometimes they will come and yes, if they decided to follow the code, I mean, we need to support the code as a commission, but also there needs to be an understanding of it's not a measurable thing. It's about making things creating articulation and, you know, and so it gets a little conflicted, but I think if we have at least 3 architects on the board, it probably will work versus having just one architect trying to explain everyone.
I'll just join the conversation.
Go ahead. Jump on
in.
it.
Can I talk?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't see your name flashing here, so.
I actually, remind me again, when we see these site plans, what phase of their design? Is it?
It's like 65%.
See, that's the part that I don't.
No, it's not
Yes,
15.
But they're saying.
It's 15?
No, they're saying that there's something in the code that says that they can come to us when they are 15%, which that would not compromise like the cost of the 60% of the client, and then we say no.
50?
So, yes, the code has enough to say, yes, you can come early and you can present an alternative.
No, Ms.
The
Green.
problem that I was having,
She's asking about when the.
they come at 60% majority, but
65,
because their choice,
65,
it's
yeah.
their choice.
Yeah, they can either come at 65 and go through the normal process, or if they want to present an alternative that's not part of the menu choices, then they can come when their design is at least 15%, meaning they can come at 25%, 30%, 40%. You know, and the idea is they come before the commission, you know, before they get to 65% and have already spent a lot of money. I mean, they can come as early as 15%.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, and the idea is they can come and test the waters, you know, and see what, you know, present their design and get a reaction from the commission before they proceed, you know, down that road to alternative equivalent compliance.
And I think that at this stage with 3 architects, we're in a good position to provide some feedback, but I don't know that that's always going to be the case.
And just to my worry of like, what will you feel if like they come present something at 65% and you guys have some corrections because there's 3 feet missing and we revoke that and say, no, it's not necessary. Would that be okay for you guys that we're changing the code a little just because we believe that there's some aesthetics and articulation?
Yeah, we have that
Yeah,
authority.
I mean, as it came up before, if I remember correctly, they couldn't put some bump out or recession because they had, I think it was a staircase, like an interior staircase, there was a storage room, or there was something like that. And, I remember now, they didn't meet the window coverage, the percentage of windows, and if they were to put the window in, it was going to be a storage room or some kind of utility room, and they were thinking, we really want to put a light in that area. And so they were asking the commission for a little lenience in that situation. And as I remember, I think the commission did grant that, and they approved that case. So, there is things that, the menus choices are not always going to catch, even with the menus. So, every design that comes before the commission is kind of a case-by-case assessment of, we have the code and how hard did the architects work, to really meet the code, and if, there is a situation where it doesn't really work, and they present that, and the commission and staff are convinced by that, then maybe there's a reason that, you can grant some lenience in those situations. But Tom is here also. I don't know if he wants to jump in, but Tom knows this subject backwards and forwards. So that's, at this point, what we were hearing that night from Mr. Robinson, I don't know. I wasn't convinced by it. I think that if they wanted to come through alternative equivalent compliance, it's in the code. I don't think he's exercised it or really attempted to go down that road. So, the planners really thought that there's no demonstrated need to form this architectural review committee at this point, because it just hasn't been demonstrated yet that we really need it. Because I think we've put in, Tom, purposely wrote this section to give the architects, flexibility. And we feel it's in there, and we're not convinced otherwise at this point.
Great, Ms. Morse.
Sorry.
Line it up now.
Thank you, Ed. I think Sharon has come to the same, or at least planning has come to the same conclusion that I did a few months ago. I think there's an opportunity there, and we see civil engineers coming here and they present to UDC because they're used to it and it's their normal. This is a new process. Architects aren't used to it. They're resisting. But as we see that adoption, I think it is the right process that the whole board be able to see the project and not a specific committee. And at the 15% and all of that, I think the right code is there. I've reread it recently after Sharon's email. I see that it should work. We just haven't had the right project come forward.
Okay. Mr. Winchester.
Thanks. I think that with the 15%, and I likewise have reread it, and I do appreciate that's in there, that Tom put that in there. It does give that opportunity. I think that the perception, though, is the reality, not the reality, meaning, our perception of what's really going on in our community is what's really there for us, as architects. And I think as an architect that's been here for too many years,
20?
I would certainly in the Anchorage area. I would say that one of the perceptions is that the code has put all of these restrictions and lots of tables and graphs and conformances and possible solutions that limit, if you will, what the architect can do or what the client will allow the architect to do. And I think sometimes we really forget, we all work for clients, and clients walk up and say, by the way, I need a concept design in 3 weeks, and I need a cost estimate in 4, so that I can decide if I'm going to do this project or not. And that doesn't allow an architect time to say, oh, well, let me take this 15% solution before the UDC, da-da-da-da-da, see if it works. There's a reality to the money, and let's follow the money because that's the only way that most of our projects happen. And so I'm not saying that we don't have the solution already in the code, but what I am saying is the community of architects that I know in Anchorage doesn't believe we do and believes that we have a disconnect that and then certainly the community of developers who have to pay for us and those projects has that same perception. And that's not helping us as a community to develop the kind of projects we want. And so I don't know how to get that word out. Maybe this conversation is what's going to start that process, and then expanding this conversation to get it to everyone to understand how they can is going to help. But I can tell you right now, most of the developers that I know, and certainly architects, feel like we have at this point, maybe several months ago, that it is a limited process, and they are turning to other places to put their money, or not doing something that they maybe could be doing. So that's kind of where I think.
That's very well stated. And I would agree that that is the crux of it all. That we do have in our Title 21 a way to do it, but we have on the other hand the reality that's like Joe Schmo developer wants this in 3 weeks, and hey, can you get this approved? And it's like, well, that's going to take 3 months. Oh, we don't have that time. So I think that's where it came from, and I also agree that it's there, but so if you could reevaluate.
Well, I think that's what we were hearing a little bit coming from that developer that night was, gee, you don't leave us a lot of options. We have to hire these people and get to here and get to there. And oh, by the way, the funding, date is this date. And if you don't have it funded by then, or we didn't get it approved by then, we lose the funding. In case of Cook Inlet Housing, that's exactly the case.
Yeah. But I just want to point out, if they wanted to come and present a concept to the commission, this is not a case, so they don't have to, get on 2 months ahead of it. We could put them on the agenda right away.
They don't know. I didn't know that.
It's not a case. It's not a case. They're just I don't know. We don't actually have anything because it hasn't happened. But we could put it under informational, blah blah blah, whatever it says on here.
I was not aware of that process.
I was not aware of that.
Oh yeah, we have people come.
No developer in town knows that.
Nope.
Yeah, a parent's request.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's on the agenda. So.
Well, I agreed, it's on the agenda, but no developer knows that
they may not. But certainly Tyler knows this. And others who come regularly to the commission, if they've ever read the agenda, and they know that that's a possibility. Or, what I was also thinking, does the AIA meet monthly? Do they have monthly meetings?
No.
Do they meet annually?
Yep.
Okay.
No, but they could send
that would
an
be
email.
Entertaining
They
right
could
there.
send an email explaining. I think Melissa can help us with that.
If it's true, there is this, and I'm sure it is true, that there's this perception out here that Title 21 is like this, straitjacket for architects. I'll volunteer this guy over here to go to the next annual AIA meeting and make a presentation to let all the architects in town know that
it's in Ketchikan in October. If you want.
Yeah, isn't there's the developers and builders I don't know what it is, that group that meets monthly where the developers get together. Tom can make a presentation to them and it would reach all the developers. That, Title 21 is not intended to be a straitjacket for, their developments.
So what you were just explaining was that somebody could come here if they have even like a 10% idea.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's Tuesday before
Well,
the
at least 15%.
Or 15%.
They have to get it to us in time to get it into your packet, but that's a week
before.
ahead of the meeting. It's just we did did tonight. I
Seems
mean,
like a
Tom
win-win.
wasn't on the agenda. Tom wasn't even on the agenda. I wasn't officially on the agenda. So there is some flexibility that if they come to us, a couple of weeks in advance, we can get them on the agenda. Or we can do, an email out to you, look, we've got somebody who wants to make a presentation, so.
So then we wouldn't make a formal motion, or would we make a motion like, oh yeah, that sounds normal, or no, that doesn't sound like anything?
Yeah, I think it's not, you wouldn't formally do anything because it's not a case. It's just, you're expressing your opinion on the concept that's being presented to you.
Lori is explaining that if it's a public,
Well, no,
we can't hear you.
through the chair, remember appearance requests only allow them 5 minutes too, if they come
Right.
under appearance requests.
Okay.
But they have to be, have previous notice to be on the agenda, not just walk up and be reordered.
And that's a week?
Muni employees come in for information items only,
What
I
about
guess, for-
under consent agenda number 3, other?
Consent agenda is a motion to approve as one,
Well, you-
period. Anything on the consent agenda
Yeah,
is a
I'm
motion.
trying to find a way
So maybe under
to let
special
them-
order?
I mean,
Business? Is
say
the only
that
other
again?
thing. Special order of business?
Special order of business, yeah.
Like number 2,
Let's
yeah.
see.
You could do that or
Yeah,
something,
under
but it would
special
still need to
order-
be.
Yeah. I
them
would just
plenty
like
of
to
notice.
encourage whatever it takes, if we can set up a process
Yeah.
where with 2 weeks' notice, somebody can come in with 15% drawings and get a reaction
Yeah.
of the UDC before they go any further. I guarantee you, the architects and developers will take advantage of that because they'll be able to say, well, geez, that doesn't cost much. We can go, grab our stuff, do, a couple weeks of work or whatever and come in and present and say, I've got this idea. At least everybody says, yeah, that looks pretty good. And staff's looked at it and everybody says, yeah, we'll take a look at that.
And they may end saving money.
Yeah, and they may, whatever, but we've got to get the word out because that's not at all what any of us understand. We all think we have to provide either the 65% or whatever.
Alternate means, and alternate means, there's a whole standard.
Alternate means and methods and, go through staff approval of all of that kind of thing and get some general approval that that's what you agree with. That's a huge process compared to even sitting down with you with a meeting, even, 2 weeks prior, saying, here's what our ideas are, and you guys saying, well, let's run this up the flagpole.
Right, right, and that's
then,
what it's
boom, it
intended to
comes
be.
up here.
So if you all look at your agendas, going back to what Lori's suggestion was under C, special order of business, if you look at number 2, we've added for just tonight's meeting, the annual election of officers. There's no reason why under number 2, we can't hear, somebody's, whoever they are, would be number 2 on this agenda, and we can handle it that way.
Yeah. And I think if you guys encourage anyone who's talking to you to say, if you've got a good idea, you guys can review it first and then run it to us. And then at least they're not spending 65% design.
Yeah.
Right. Tom, is there anything you want to add?
Ms. Morse?
Thank you, Chair. I think a presentation would be useful, a larger one, but the first step, like an infographic, like here's the process, boil it down, give some timelines, and we can be the first ones to deliver it out to the city. I'm happy to take it to AIA in October, but that's in October. We can go to BOMA, we can find other organizations to...
BOMA, that was the organization I was trying to remember, yeah.
They don't always do multifamily there, but some sort of boiled down one-pager, this option is there, guys. Let's kind of advertise it. I'm happy to help on that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. That was good dialogue.
That was a good, Thank you, Sharon, for following.
Tom?
Congrats, Ed, on your last meeting.
Yeah, thanks. Tom, did you have something that you had your hand up that we were answering what you were going to say?
Well, I think that what Commissioner Morse just said refers to this kind of written user guidance information that this type of code was always meant to be accompanied by. It was never meant to be put upon the community without without that very type of thing, and so maybe that'd be very helpful. We've been talking with Dave and with the land use review folks about circling back to complete some kind of informational material for housing developers about how to get through this section, what it can do, and maybe this infographic idea and presenting, get the word out so at least people know what it can do would be really helpful this year. So yeah, we may take Commissioner Morris up on that.
Cool, thanks. Nothing else other than no May meeting or June? Whoa.
Ed, I have a personal note to announce to the commission. I am probably looking at retiring very soon.
What?
Yes. My house is in process of being sold.
Oh, wow.
Yep, so I'm very close to retiring. In fact, this may be my last meeting.
Wow.
So I just wanted to let you guys know so I don't sort of sneak out of town. But so I'm planning to sell the house, and if it goes through, and move down to Fort Collins, Colorado.
Oh,
I don't know permanently, but I was going to retire in like Vancouver, Washington, across from Portland to see if I liked it out there, if I could stand the rain. But then my oldest daughter, got a job in Steamboat Springs, Colorado last summer, and she said, why don't you move out here? And I thought, well, why not? So I'm going to go out there, and I don't know if it's permanent, but I'm going to go out there for a while and see if I like it. And I hear Fort Collins is a really nice town. I've never even been there, but I'm moving there anyway. So that's the plan.
Congratulations on retiring. That's a huge step.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, that'll be fun next chapter in your life. And thank you for all your efforts here on the Urban Design Commission. I know that certainly some of the meetings we would have been lost. So thank you. And it's been something like 20 some odd years or something. 21, yeah, that's great. So you will be missed. Thank you. And maybe you,
Thank you.
Thanks. If anybody else has anything, June, if you're still here, maybe you'll come to June if you haven't packed all your bags.
Right, I may.
Bring some cookies.
Okay.
Yeah. Come and sit in the audience and then be.
Okay.
It'll be a painful meeting.
Yeah. And I'll ask some penetrating questions,
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, yeah, June. Do we have a June meeting?
I don't know for sure.
Okay, I might not be here if it's in the second Tuesday.
Is it?
I will be on a month-long road trip.
And then this is like, we haven't denied that many.
That was the second denial.
Yes, that I've been
Since
involved
I've been on.
in like 6 years.
Oh, yeah, the container, right? So maybe the third, no, that was the second.
I feel bad.
Ever.
First meeting. Denied.
Hopefully we had enough findings. I think we did.
My first meeting, I had to recuse myself for my case, and they asked me to return for redesign. They were going to reject it. It was terrible.
So we, thank you.
They.
I mean, the library got returned too.
Yeah.
Which we haven't finished. We will.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. It was a great meeting. If I get a motion to adjourn, Ms. Ream, thank you. Ms. Morse, thank you. See everybody in a couple of months. Have a great spring.
50 degrees.